So for macroeconomic policies, I would basically learn these, even though these are both fiscal policy and these are both monetary policy, I would learn them all separately. Um, and for each of these things, I would make sure that I know what they are, their diagram, their effect, and an evaluation of why they may not work, and also when to use them. If you know that, then you'll be able to write a paragraph about all of them anyway. So let's just go in order, okay?
Mhm.
Fiscal policy is when there is an increase in government spending or a decrease in taxation, causing AD to shift to the right. Okay.
Right.
Based on that, if I tell you that contractionary fiscal policy is the opposite, what would that be?
A decrease in government spending or an increase in taxation,
Causing?
causing a shift left. An increase in taxation, maybe shifts left.
Perfect. And then expansionary monetary policy. If you're writing your own notes, just leave spaces, or I'll send you this after and you can do it properly. Because I'm going to go in a random order.
Okay.
Expansionary monetary policy is a something also causing AD to shift right. And then contractionary monetary policy is a something causing AD to shift to the left. So both of these things are tools causing AD to shift left or shift right in the economy. Monetary policy is a different tool. So it's when you a decrease in interest rates. And this is an increase in interest rates. Okay. Not that important, but this is done by the government, usually once a year, apart from emergencies. Every April, the government will decide to set a budget for the following year, either with high spending or low spending, or high taxes or low taxes. Monetary policy is set by the Bank of England, and they do it every month. They'll increase and decrease interest rates slightly every single month. Um, so this one and this one cause AD to shift to the right, so they're useful to correct. Remember that we always link everything to the four objectives. So which four objectives, which of the objectives would this help to like fix? What would the economy be like for us to want to use this?
Um, Objectives of oh,
Like, the objectives are inflation,
oh yeah.
unemployment, and
Okay.
economic growth, and current account.
Okay.
Forget current account for the time being. Out of these, which ones, when would you use this? Like, which ones would be like
When
target
you want um I think economic growth and unemployment.
when you want? So when there's high or low economic growth?
When there's low,
Yep. So low economic growth or like an economic decline. So the economy is declining or stagnating or recession.
recession,
Um, Also, when would you use it to fix very, very low inflation or very, very high inflation?
high inflation.
No, you'd use it to fix very,
Oh,
very low
oh,
inflation. Okay. Because when AD shifts to the right, what
oh, people spending.
like the price of it will
I
increase.
mean, yeah.
So that's why. So we can use it to correct weak economic growth, high unemployment, but we can also use it to correct deflation or very low inflation.
Okay.
Same here. It's the exact same thing. Okay. So then when would you use contractionary fiscal policy or contractionary monetary policy?
When there's low inflation,
Yeah. Wait, what?
like
So
Mm,
when would
enormous.
you want to achieve a left shift? Like when would you want to go from
When prices are too high.
yes, so when inflation is too high.
I meant higher. Oh,
Oh, is that what you said before?
yeah, no, that's what I meant. I didn't.
Inflation. Um, the reason it's important is because sometimes the question will say, what would be an appropriate policy to fix X, Y, Z? So you'll like look at the question and you'll know which policy to use.
Okay.
Um, so yeah, these expansionary ones are good when there's like high unemployment or weak growth. These contractionary ones are only used because like you can't have very, very, very high economic growth and you can't have too high or too low. You can't have too high employment or too low unemployment.
Hmm.
But the main thing is sometimes inflation gets too high, so you'll need to
Okay.
correct that. That's the reason for doing that. And there's also some side objectives as well, like if the government need to raise more money, if their spending is too high, but we'll cover that as well afterwards. Okay.
Okay.
Um, the diagram is actually we already covered that. The diagram is a right shift in AD. The diagram for this is also a right shift in AD. The diagram for this and this is a left shift in AD.
Okay. Cool.
Okay. Um, are you comfortable drawing those diagrams or do you want help going through them?
The AD one.
Yeah.
I think. Yeah. I think.
Yeah. Let's just do one of them for practice. Let's just do that
It's,
one. So what would go on your y-axis?
um. Oh wait. Price.
Yeah,
Price level.
price level. And what about your x-axis?
Real GDP.
Yep. And you're gonna do an AD like that and an AD like that. Um, what supply curve would you use? Would you use LRAS, SRAS, or the
Uh.
curved one?
Area.
Yeah, you can either use SRAS, completely fine,
Mm-hmm.
or you can use the Keynesian aggregate supply curve because it will show that
Oh yeah.
it shows that the impact on price level, it exaggerates the impact on price level at different points.
Okay. Yeah.
It's useful because if I shift AD any more than that, I'm not having any benefit. Okay. And it's showing us also that so you've got Y2 and Y1. And you've got price level 2 and price level 1. Wait, the meeting's going to end. I'll just restart it.
Okay.
Um, um, so from price level 1 to price level 2. The reason this is useful is it shows that we're approaching like full capacity, and that's when inflation gets too high. So that's why it's good to use this diagram. But if not, SRS is fine as well.
Okay. Cool.
Cool. The diagram's the same for this one and for the contraction and monetary one. Okay.
Okay.
Mm, cool. The last one, okay, let's go through all the evaluations for each of them, and then we will talk about the consequences at the end. Okay, so we're going to go in like a lot of detail now.
Mhm.
So I'm going to give like, so what do you think is bad about using this as a method? So overall, it's going to be good because we're going to get higher economic growth. we're going to get lower unemployment and we're going to get some inflation.
Mhm.
Those are the objectives. Why would fiscal expansionary fiscal policy, why would this be a bad way of achieving that?
Um,
What's bad about increasing government spending or decreasing tax?
um, it's a opportunity cost.
Good. So let's start with the basic one. So one is that, and I don't really want to use this one in an essay, but it's just the basic point that most people start with. So if not controlled, that could be inflation. But that's a very, very basic. We don't really want to use it, but let's just get that out of the way because you might hear it later on.
Yeah.
Second is opportunity cost, but there's a better way of phrasing that. Instead of opportunity cost, in a in micro, we like to talk about opportunity cost because it's money that would be spent on other things. In macro,
Mhm.
I want you to refer to the deficit will increase.
Okay.
Do you know what a budget deficit is?
Not in detail.
Government spending is higher than tax revenue. Okay.
Okay.
So a balanced budget, it will become common sense after, but right now it's triple. So it's when government spending equals tax revenue. So that's money the government spend, that's money the government get in. A
Okay.
deficit is when government spending is more than tax revenue. And a budget surplus, which never happens in the UK, is when tax revenue is more than government spending.
Okay.
Later on, you're going to hear about a current account deficit. That's different. That's about exports and imports. Don't mix up a budget deficit or budget surplus with a current account deficit or a current account surplus. Okay. Um, why is it bad to always have a budget deficit?
Um, because then you're always gonna be like sort of in debt.
Yeah. So when governments spend more than they have or more than they earn, it means that they've borrowed money from someone or somewhere. So
Mhm.
national debt will increase. National debt is the accumulation. You can use a different word. It's the when you
Mhm.
add up all the budget deficits again and again.
All right.
And then we're making chains of reasoning to make our answer bigger. So national debt will increase. That's bad because in order to pay it back in the future, government may have to will have not may have to will definitely have to cut spending or increase taxes. Okay. I'm not going to go into full detail about this, but we're going to cover it later. Uh,
All right.
that's going to either cause AD to shift left again later. So we're just doing something temporary, or it means that we're going to cut spending on schools or hospitals or increase people's taxes. So there's bad things about that, which we're going to learn about later. Um, cool. I want to talk about one more. That's like the main bad thing. You're also going to hear other evaluations because economics is kind of endless. You can read more and more interesting points. But this is like
Mhm.
the most basic point, and it will still get you really good marks.
Cool.
You hear other ones like crowding out. So if you hear it and understand it, then that can be a good one to use. Otherwise, this is perfectly fine. One more. Let's talk about a good thing about fiscal policy though, which can be snuck into your paragraph beforehand.
Mhm.
Um, it's that the multiplier effect is more likely to happen. Okay. Do you know what the multiplier effect is?
Mm,
It's when an initial increase in aggregate demand leads to further increases in aggregate demand. Okay.
Okay.
And just for context, like if you're wondering where this would apply in exams, so mostly for 25 mark questions, we're going to get things like, so year 12 macro questions, we're going to get things like this one. Use the the extracts and your knowledge to assess the effect of fiscal policy and monetary policy in sustaining the recovery of an economy. So this is where you're going to use that paragraph.
Okay.
Or here, assess the view that actually maybe not that one. We're going to use supply side policy for this one. This one here, evaluate different ways the government could prevent a rise in structural unemployment. This one, evaluate different ways the government can increase the long run rate of economic growth. And this one, the impact of a significant increase in government spending. So these are where you'd use like this stuff.
All right.
The multiplier effect happens is when, so imagine if AD shifts to the right a
Yeah.
bit. So I've got my aggregate supply curve. AD shifts to the right, and then it actually shifts to the right more. That's what the multiplier effect is.
Okay.
And it's quite cool. So by any chance, do you remember what Eat Out to Help Out was during COVID? Wait, were you? Yeah.
No,
No.
not really.
No? That's fine. Okay, I'll use a different example.
I mean, no, it's fine. I don't mind.
No, that's fine. So,
It might like come to me if you talk about it.
oh yeah, it's fine. Eat Out to Help Out was just like this thing where the government made every restaurant bill half price for like a few weeks because they wanted to get people to go out.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
But there's so many examples. So let's just say the government spend money to build like Battersea Power Station, the new tube station.
Mm-hmm.
So let's say the government spent some money so I'm guessing, I don't know where the money, like how it works. It might be like the London mayor's budget, or it might be, let's just assume the government put some money in to help
Mm-hmm.
build Battersea Power Station. So government spending happened to build a new tube station, e.g. Battersea Power Station. Because G increased, then AD will increase, right?
Yeah.
Because AD equals.
C plus I plus G plus X minus N.
Good. So there you go, AD increased once. But it's really fun and interesting because what happened was when the government spent more money on the tube station, that
Mm-hmm.
created jobs for people to work on building the tube station, like construction workers.
Yeah.
So let's just say construction workers saw an increase in disposable income. And also businesses saw an increase in profits. Because some people, like, it's a not really nice station, so nearby, like all the shops would see more customers.
Yeah.
These guys with more incomes or more profits are going to increase we're going to see an increase in consumer spending, and we're also going to see an increase in investment. So not only does G increase and AD increases, C increases as well, and I increases as well. Those are just some examples.
Okay.
So therefore, AD increases more than it did initially. And the diagram for that is simply an AD shifts to the right 2 or 3 or 4 times. Yeah.
Cool.
That's all you have to show.
Okay.
And that's a good thing. So if you're deep in a recession, you don't want AD to increase a little bit. If the government's going to spend so much money on a tube station, you want it to increase more and more and more.
Cool.
I think on your homework thing, it said something about marginal propensity to consume or the multiplier was somewhere. Um,
Um,
we're going on we're getting quite detailed now, but we might as well cover it. One factor that affects this, so there's two equations for multiplier. So it's the overall increase divided by the initial increase. So if it increased, but if the government spending was like 1 billion, but AD increased by 2 billion, then the multiplier is just 2. Does that make sense?
okay. Yeah.
That's the basic one. And then the second one is quite hard. It's K equals 1 over 1 minus MPC. Take your time and like process it over time. You'll see it more and more.
Mhm.
But now that you're aware of it, next time you'll be able to understand what it's like, what it means.
Okay.
Basically, it's just saying, so marginal propensity to consume, if I give you, let's say if I give you £100,
Mhm.
if you won £100 on a scratch card or you were gifted £100 for your birthday, like right now,
Yeah.
how much of this would you spend and how much would go in your savings? It's just you can either make up an answer or say what you'd actually.
Probably half. Maybe.
Yeah, so you'd spend 50 on something nice, um, like food or shopping, and you'd save 50, right?
Mhm.
So your marginal propensity to consume is 0.5. Okay.
Okay.
If I gave somebody with if I gave like it's a bit sad, but if I gave a homeless person £100, how much of that are they going to spend and how much of that are they going to save?
They'll probably spend more,
They're going
or
to
maybe
spend
all
probably
of it.
all of it. Like they're probably going to have to spend all of
Yeah.
it and save zero of it. So their marginal propensity to consume is 1. Okay.
Okay.
So the
Okay. Yeah.
if the government are spending money, they'd like it to be directed towards people who are going to spend the money more. So
Yeah.
government like spend money reducing the income tax of very low earners. The government know that these people will get a bit of extra money and they'll spend it on other stuff. So it stays in the economy. If the
Yeah.
government decrease the taxes of very wealthy people, then they're just going to increase their savings and the money is not going to be recycled into the
Mm.
economy. So we want this to be low. No, we want this to be high, so then the multiplier also becomes high. Okay. Wait, over 1 month. If that's very, very high, then that's gonna so if that's like 0.9, then that becomes 0.1. So 1 divided by 0.1 is 10. Yeah.
Okay.
How's your maths? Is it okay? Your basic maths?
Yeah.
Like, as an example, if I do k equals 1 over 1 minus 0.9, what would that would be 1 over 0.1, which is 10, right?
Yeah.
So that's a very, very high multiplier because the people are spending 90% of the money they're getting. Okay. So that's like useful to know for multiple choice and just like sometimes you might
Yeah.
add an estimate. But overall, if the government spend money strategically, they're also able to benefit from an increase in AD, but also further increases in AD because of the multiplier effect. Cool. Does that all make sense?
Yeah.
Perfect. On the other hand, the government can decrease government spending or increase taxation. That will cause AD to shift to the left, and that will be really useful when inflation gets too high. the evaluation for that is something we're also going to come to. Well, the good thing is that it also does a side objective of reducing the budget deficit or achieving a budget surplus. Remind me, what was a budget deficit?
When government spending exceeds revenue. Government
Tax revenue. Good. And that can be used to
revenue.
reduce or pay off national debt. So that's a good thing. National debt is also, I didn't say it earlier, but national debt is also bad because it means that there'll be a high amount of interest payments being. So if you've got national debt of £100 billion, you're paying like £1 billion a year just for interest.
Okay.
So there's wasted money there. If we had no debt,
Yeah.
then we could use that £1 billion to spend on other stuff like schools.
Mhm.
But then the bad thing about this is going to be linked to the damaging effect of cutting spending on certain areas, schools, NHS, um, higher taxes, and so on. But we're going to come to it when we study supervisory policies.
Yeah. Okay.
Cool. That's everything I think for fiscal policy, both expansionary and contractionary. Let's have a quick look at monetary policy. Do you know what interest rates are?
Like sort of extra costs on money.
Cost to do what?
Like on money.
Yeah. So if you decrease interest rates, it's going to be a lower cost of borrowing and a lower reward for saving. So what would that encourage people to do? Borrow or save?
Borrow.
Yep. So they're less encouraged to save and more encouraged to spend. Okay. Um, Overall, AD will shift to the right, and we know why it's useful. Let's just talk about the evaluation. Evaluation means, will this always work or will this always be a good idea?
Mhm.
The first thing is it's useful because it's every month and it's really good for subtle changes. Like if inflation creeps a tiny bit high, then we can increase interest rates a tiny bit. Or vice versa, just like every month by 0.1%, 0.2%, 0.1% up or down.
Mhm.
So it's quite flexible and there's less of a delay. But even then, with both cases, there could be a delay. So this government spending stuff, it could be next April they're talking about it, or this could be next month. And by the time we hear the news about it, banks make changes, then that will take time as well.
Mhm.
Um, I'm just thinking what other point I would use. I would say um I think this is all going to be quite new to you, but let's see anyway how it goes. One
Mhm.
thing that when the government decide to spend money on a tube station or on infrastructure or restaurants, that really boosts people's consumer confidence and it triggers the multiplier effect. If the Bank of England decide to lower interest rates, somebody who's quite keen on saving, or imagine during COVID, you're quite scared that you're going to lose your job,
Yeah.
because you know how everything was getting shut down during COVID.
Yeah.
People would have been scared that they're going to be made redundant. So for that reason, they're going to save a lot of money just in case they lose their job in the future. Until that threat is over, then they'll start spending again. So if the government say, "Oh, hey," if the Bank of England say, "Hey, we're going to reduce interest rates," is that gonna are people gonna start spending money, or are they still going to keep saving?
Everybody gonna spend
So in theory, like if interest rates go down from if interest rates go down, you're less rewarded for saving. So in theory, yes, but in
Oh,
real life, like if interest rates goes down from 3% to like 2.8% or
oh
2.5,
yeah.
are you gonna just start borrowing money, or are you gonna just
I
start,
mean,
are you gonna
no.
save less and just start spending it?
Yeah.
You are?
Yeah.
But if you're scared
I mean,
of,
it's not.
but what if you're scared of losing your job still?
Well, right. I think probably still save then.
Sorry?
Maybe not. Maybe not
Okay.
as much.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Yeah. So it kind of like it's less likely to like a lot of people might not even know what interest rates are in the general
Yeah.
population. A lot of people might not um be that tempted. Even if they know what they are, they'll realize that there's the consumer spending is affected by multiple things. So
Hmm.
consumer spending is affected by confidence, remember?
Yeah.
Um, interest rates was one of them. Disposable incomes,
Income.
yeah. So disposable incomes, confidence, interest rates, and some other things. But if confidence is still low and disposable incomes are low or potentially low, and expectations of the future are weak because of COVID,
Hmm.
would lowering the interest rate make much of a difference on somebody's consumption? Not really as much, right?
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay.
So it's going to be ineffective or less effective if consumer confidence is going to remain low. Okay. And I think that's called a liquidity trap. Let me just double check.
Oh yeah, we did that. A
That's
tiny bit.
yeah. So it's when very low interest rates fails to stimulate aggregate demand. So that would be my evaluation. That's like probably the easiest one I can think of. In year 13, like, or by the time you practice more and more, you can learn more fancy ones, so like exchange rates being impacted, or monetarist view versus other people's view. Um, but I'm not going to confuse right now. I
Yeah.
would, whenever you do an essay or paragraph, go with the most simple one, apart from like silly ones like
Yeah.
inflation will be uncontrollable and stuff like that. If it's realistic, like budget deficits and liquidity trap, then it's completely fine.
Cool. All right.
Um, do you know anything about exchange rates? Have you done that at school yet?
A bit. Yeah.
Okay. What is an exchange rate?
Well, sort of like within currency. You
Yeah, the value of a currency in terms of another good. Okay, I'm going to use that for okay, I might use that here. Anyway, so contractionary monetary policy, what would that be? We did it already, but just for recap, what do you think? What do you remember of that? What is it
know.
used for, and what does it do?
When there's high inflation,
Yep.
um, low unemployment.
Yeah, when there's high inflation, so
Mm.
what can the government do? What is contractionary monetary policy? What does the Bank of England do?
When they sort of subsidizing,
What do they do to
they
interest
increase
rates?
spending.
No, no.
Oh,
What do they do to interest rates?
they lower them.
Other way,
Oh, oh, okay, wait.
they increase interest rates so that AD will shift to the
Um, mm, left.
yeah. But don't let's think it through. So if you have high interest rates, what does that mean? What happens to the cost of borrowing or the reward for saving?
It goes up.
Good. So reward for saving goes up. So what does that encourage people to do?
Well,
Sorry.
save,
Yep.
like,
So
and more
consumption
spend.
goes down.
And
So
spending goes
then AD will go
to the left.
down. Yeah, left. Because AD equals C plus I plus G. So if that's lower, then that will be lower.
Alright.
And also business will be lower as well because businesses also borrow money to like to spend, to invest, right?
Mhm.
Cool. Um okay. Just so that you don't mix anything up. Okay.
Mhm.
Expansionary always causes what?
AD to shift left, right?
Yep. And contractionary always causes what?
AD to shift left.
Perfect. And fiscal policy, what are the tools that are used for fiscal policy and what are the tools used for monetary policy?
Monetary is like interest rate.
Yep. And that will go up or down depending on which one it is. And fiscal, what are the tools used for fiscal policy?
Um,
Just try to, don't use your notes, try to just think. Don't worry if you can't get it.
yeah.
What was the
So,
other example apart from interest rates? Government
yeah.
spending and taxation. Okay,
Oh,
cool. So then they can either make that go up or down or up or down.
okay.
And that's done by the government and that's done by the Bank of England. Yeah.
Okay.
We covered like normally like you'd spend a whole lesson going over one of them at a time, but we went through it
Yeah.
fast, so you can just like test yourself on it again afterwards.
Yeah.
The main
Okay.
thing is knowing again, knowing what they all are, knowing the diagram for them, which is easy.
Mhm.
When to use them is easy if you know what they are, and their evaluation.
Oh,
I'll do one fancy evaluation for this one, and then we'll do surprise policies next time.
cool. Yeah.
The reason for using this is to correct high inflation, but monetary policy, contractionary monetary policy can also go wrong because higher interest rates lead to more demand for the pound. Um, Basically, you see wealthy people or investors,
Mhm.
they like they need to save their money, right?
Yeah.
Whether the interest rate is as high as possible. So people, businesses or like people with a lot of money, they're gonna purchase UK bonds because interest rates are higher. Like they're gonna save basically they're gonna save their money in the UK because interest rates are high rather than in another country. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's so foreign people are gonna like want to come into the UK just to save money. Like the I'm talking about
Okay.
very wealthy people. Okay. So that's called hot money flows or money flows into the country. Don't worry if you don't remember all of this. Make
Mhm.
sure you understand it. So people are gonna come and try and save the money in the UK because interest rates are higher.
Mhm.
That means there's more demand for the pound. So that actually means exchange rates go up. Like the value of the pound goes up. And again, it will come together when you do other topics a bit more.
Yeah.
But when the value of the pound increases, do you know what is easier to do? Like, is it cheaper to import or cheaper to export?
Cheaper to import.
Yeah, because like when you have a strong pound and you go to uh like Asia, you can buy yeah,
Yeah.
it feels
You
cheap.
can, yeah, afford more.
So imports will increase. So it worsens another objective, like it worsens the balance of payment. So like basically, a policy is good or bad depending on how many objectives it fixes. So we might be fixing this, but we're worsening this. So then it's a bad policy, right?
Mhm.
Cool. That's like one example. Again, there's many different evaluations. Really, you just have to know one good one for each. Over time, it's good to know like maybe two, depending on like what you're learning.
Alright.
That was a lot of information, so we'll do this next time. We can look at your homework quickly, but apart from that, I would literally just say recap. What is fiscal, expansionary fiscal, contractionary fiscal, expansion monetary, contraction monetary, and just maybe draw a table and just try and fill everything like that, how much you can remember from each of the
Okay.
different sections. Okay.